Hey, you can't have that because you're not in a militia. Oh dear God, not again. Here's what's missing again. I get gun control's desire to reimagine a civil right, but the problem with all imaginations is that they have to grapple with reality. And one of those realities is evident in Form 4473. Now, I've filled out several of these, which you need to fill out in order to have a gun transferred to you. And I see questions pertaining to citizenship or residency, legal record, drug history, but nothing about service in a militia. Come to think of it, for the guns that I have sold privately, there has never been any requirement that was laid upon me to ensure that the buyer was getting them for use in a militia. And with at least 350 million guns in civilian hands, with probably very few of them in actual service to a sort of militia, organized or otherwise, you have concrete evidence that something's wrong with gun control's understanding of the Second Amendment. And again, Heller makes it clear that the right to keep and bear arms was independent of militia service, expounding from linguistics, history, and case law. Now, this all should be enough to refute this myth, but it stubbornly remains a gun control favorite. Now, I had already followed the logic of the entirety of the Second Amendment in a video that I had made last season. But I'll recap here because while gun control folk accuse gun rights folk of ignoring half of the Second Amendment, they themselves ignore 2/3 of it, including the part that is really the sine qua non of the entire amendment. To review, here's the full text. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, to see how this amendment all flows together, it is helpful to break it up into 3 parts. Well-regulated militia, security of the free state, and the right of the people to keep and bear arms. This is a goal, to keep a free state free. This is a means to that goal, a well-functioning and well-equipped armed citizenry. And this is the source material that makes the well-armed and well-equipped armed citizenry possible, which is namely a citizenry that has the right to keep and bear arms. Now, this part right here is the sine qua non of the entire amendment. Because if you hamper this, you're hindering the existence of this, and thus you are undermining this. Now, I already mentioned in the other video how the standoff at Bundy Ranch proved the efficacy of the Second Amendment with groups of armed citizens organized together to stand up against the federal government that was engaged in some overreach. The feds backed down, and the Bundys were later acquitted. But those were just federal agents, not an army with helicopter bombs and tanks. Now, people who tend to say this or use this line of argumentation tend to ignore the moral complications arising from government troops being ordered to fire on their own citizens. These same people who like to indulge in this line of thought also tend to have no answer as to what they would have to deal with a tyrannical army gone amok. But I guarantee they'll be praying for people with guns to handle the situation. And then we have what happened in Vietnam, which progressives were really fond of invoking during Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and of course, Afghanistan. Speaking of Afghanistan, this region has a long history of having defeated some of the world's most noteworthy armies, like that of Alexander the Great, the British Empire, and the Soviet Union, and the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. What all this does is prove to us that it is possible for a poorly equipped armed force to resist and even defeat a better equipped one. And students of asymmetric warfare know this all too well. Furthermore, if you look at it just in terms of raw numbers, you will see that there are far more civilians with guns in this country than there are military personnel. All the branches of military service combined yield a total personnel count of about 1.2 million, with about 800,000 in reserves. And only a portion of those are combat units, and even a smaller portion of that are ground combat units, which are necessary to hold and control territory. Just our concealed carry licensees outnumber them by over 8 to 1. And the total number of gun owners in this country outnumber them by about 67 to 1. Hell, we've got more AK and AR pattern rifles than they have military personnel by a factor of over 7 to 1. And these numbers do their part in discouraging the rise of tyranny in this country without needing to fire a single shot. And this right is ingrained in American culture. And while not everyone exercises it, those that do cherish it greatly, and those that don't reap the benefits of it. Which is why NRA ratings are such a powerful tool in helping or hindering the viability of a politician's career. This is what the Second Amendment was intended to do.
It's part of our Constitution. You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny.
Now, the tyranny that threatens the security of a free state isn't just the large-scale tyranny of an oppressive regime, but also the smaller-scale tyranny of criminal activity. Fundamentally, there's no difference. Both use force to control or take from others what is not theirs without regard to law or rights. And because they are well-versed in the language of force, they understand how this in the hands of their intended victims can complicate their plans for control. And against the smaller scale tyranny, the Second Amendment proves its efficacy year after year, saving more lives with guns than are taken with them, and averting more violent crime with guns than are committed with them. So, seeing that the Second Amendment confers such great benefits to American society, why would anyone want to reimagine it or misinterpret it out of existence unless they were interested in promoting the aims of tyranny?